Well, hello, that's me again. Today is June 4th, it is Sunday, and here are some news, so to speak, we need to discuss. And we will start with the fact of the continuous terrorist acts, into the border regions of Belgorod Oblast in Russia, and some call it diversionary reconnaissance groups, which sort of militarily it's possible that they do fit the basically table of equipment and organization of equipment for the such types of groups. But basically what they do, the Ukrainian and Russian ultra-nationalists who collaborate with the Kiev regime and Polish mercs, what they do, they go in, kill some civilians, and then try to escape, and then of course as usually they either annihilated or just try to escape and dispersed. So now we have the situation with the fact that they tried to do again this morning the basically attack on the Belgorod Oblast, which is the border region. Really, it's really very close to the border, one of the villages, and as always there were they killed some civilians, which that's mostly what they're good for. And now we have the Polish militants claim involvement in attack on Russia, and it is a Polish volunteer corps, and they infiltrated Belgorod region alongside Russian neo-Nazis. Well, they did. Well, the latest news tell us that basically they have been dispersed, many killed, and whatever is left of those are basically trying to escape back to the Ukrainian territory. And this is a terrorism, plain and simple. But the question here is not only the fact that it's a terrorist activity, which it is, but it's the fact that Warsaw now tries to say that it has nothing to do with that. Actually, it does. And that's the interesting issue which we have to touch upon today, because it is, well, it's not just interesting, it's an extremely important issue. And the fact is that the Warsaw now reacts to this. It becomes, absolutely clear that Warsaw will be held responsible for that, because just gathering and accumulating, so to speak, those volunteer quote-unquote forces there has been there, tacitly approved by the Warsaw government. And now we have another funny thing. First it was the United States, which the previous intrusion of the such group a few days ago, and the group was completely annihilated. They saw suddenly that they were using American equipment such as hammers, for example. And now we have Belgium, which is totally reasonable, and Lesoir today suddenly stated that, oh yeah, you know what, Belgium will demand the clarification from the Ukrainian side why they use Belgian weapons there, such as the special sniper rifles and things of this nature. So obviously Russia laughs at it, because quite simply, what did they expect? They say that both United States and Belgium, or anybody says, you cannot use our weapons to attack Russia. Well, it's like, you know what, I don't want to use here the sexual analogy for that, but it's like being slightly pregnant, if we use the more official, so to speak, and acceptable in the public space analogy. You cannot be slightly pregnant. You either pregnant or you don't, you're not. And obviously the fact that the governments of these nations, be that United States, Belgium, Poland, Germany, they directly are involved in supplying Kiev regime with whatever weapons they can master, so that makes them culpable. And again, can we drop the pretense that nobody understands anything? Everybody who is anybody understands everything, that combined West is openly at war, not only with Russia, not only with regime, Putin's regime as they call, no, they are at war with Russian nation with Russian people. There are many people in the US government, such as Lindsey Graham, such as Mr. Clapper, and I'm pretty sure many of those people in the State Department and intelligence community who would love nothing more than to see Russian people just die, preferably in the industrial quantities. And obviously the fact and the axiom of the warfare stands true, and it doesn't need to really be, well, that's what axiom is. It's the statement which doesn't need the proof, is the fact that terrorism, and that's what happens in Belgorod Oblast, is the weapon of the weak. It is the same thing as Ukrainian artillery shooting indiscriminately into the civilian areas, because they cannot tie them in geographically in the position, because once they do that, they will be annihilated. And so they just run those artillery pieces, just deploy them for couple of minutes, shoot at somewhere, and then run away. And so this is what they do, and this will continue, basically. And when you look at this and you begin to see things of this nature, you kind of have to start thinking a little bit in a larger, so to speak, framework, on the larger picture. And larger picture is very simple. As Scott Ritter, who just returned from Russia, is speaking to a number of the media outlets, including yesterday one speaking to the guys from the Redacted, he stated quite clearly that NATO war on Russia has failed. We know that it's failed. And those people in Pentagon and Intel community who still retain any kind of degree of competence, they understand that. Granted that, for example, operational control by American and British, especially British, is risible. The only thing they know how is to pretend that they understand how operational art works on that level. They don't. They have zero experience with that, and they try to move whatever remaining forces of Ukraine along the front line and call it maneuvering. Well, reality is, and as my sources and my friends who actually are involved directly tell me, that the only thing they can do well is to sit out in the bunkers, and that's the defense, so to speak. And as you can see yourself, what I just described to you, which is penetration into the civilian areas, and once they encountered any kind of the serious military resistance, they run. But prior to this, they managed to kill a number of civilians, like it was American Polish mercenaries. On the last raid in Belgorod, they executed the husband of one woman who was taken hostage in the front of her eye. And so, that's the modus operandi. That's the type of operations London, Washington, and Warsaw are capable of. The rest of it is beyond their competence and resources. And this is the thing which many people still cannot wrap their brains around, that NATO as a whole cannot conduct real serious combined arms war in Ukraine, even if they decide to basically appear there and try to do anything about this. For example, you can take a look at the SITREP by Russian Defense Ministry. It's official SITREP yesterday, and when you can see yourself, even and the Russian Minister of Defense is extremely conservative when describing or counting the number of the KIAs. You will see yourself that within just yesterday there were another like 450 personnel annihilated. There are a bunch of Su-27, Mi-8 have been shot down. The interception of the Storm Shadow is now a routine for Russian air defense. And when you look at this, you kind of begin to understand that this happens every day. And now this counteroffensive, which everybody, well touted counteroffensive, which is risible. I mean, it is complete PR. You have to understand that when you look at this, and for example, go to the Wall Street Journal, who yesterday actually did the interview with this cocaine sniffing dude called the president of Ukraine, and Ukrainian president says we are ready for counteroffensive. Ukrainian president also discusses U.S. election, NATO and China in wide-ranging interview. Obviously, let me put it this way, and this is where I'm going with my issue today, so to speak. is the fact that there are no normal people working in the American media, like mainstream media, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, what have you. And so they are morons, basically uneducated and uncultured, and that is why they continue to spread BS, apart from the fact that they are given, basically, the pattern, they are given the guidelines of what to talk about in the free being, I'm being facetious, of course, American media, which are nothing more than the extension of the Washington's war machine. And while Zelensky was giving this his readiness for the counteroffensive, yeah, sure, he also mentions this. Now look at this. He also urged China to try to restrain Russia and said Ukraine urgently needed more US-made Patriot missile defense systems to protect citizens from aerial bombardments and to shield frontline troops. Zelensky acknowledged Russian air superiority on the front lines and said the lack of protection from Russian air power means a large number of soldiers will die in the counter-offensive. First, and again, this is Wall Street Journal, the bunch of the morons who basically know nothing about anything outside there. They continue to spread this baloney that actually they're supposed to be the Patriot allegedly is used to shield civilians. Russians don't bomb civilians. When accidentally somebody dies, it is accident. It's not deliberate act. And you will see yourself that basically the majority of civilians are in Ukraine, for example, they're not harmed, unless, of course, they're harmed by the regime itself. And, for example, by those Patriot and other air defense missiles which fall on their apartment blocks and, possessions and real estate. And the fact is, Zelensky, in this particular case, asked for 50 Patriot missile defense systems. Considering the fact that, roughly speaking, the single missile Patriot, together with its ammunition or missile set, is roughly plus minus $2 billion. So he wants $100 billion from the American side to provide him with absolutely useless air defense systems. 3 of them have been deployed to Ukraine, 2 of them already annihilated, and they desperately try to hide the 3rd one because it will be a complete embarrassment to already fully embarrassed products of the American military-industrial complex, which are risible. I mean, it's like, how to explain it to people? Obviously, you cannot explain it to any mainstream American media figure because they're dumb. I mean, they're absolutely dumb. And apart from the fact of being basically nothing more than proxies and shields for the organizations which basically leak the information for them. And those people, how to explain it? I mean, you cannot communicate with them. They are that uneducated, that misinformed, and that absolutely unethical because they will provide or leak any kind of garbage and trash which is provided to them, which is majority from Washington. And then, of course, we have this situation. If that hasn't been enough, we have the other guy. And again, listen, this is Washington Times, Mr. Morici. Oh, Morrissey, I don't know how to pronounce his name, I don't care. So Putin has made rules, writing in Washington Times, giving him best chance of winning in Ukraine. And so the guy is PhD in economics. That means he has no education, he has no clue about the world outside. And he talks about the fact that, it faces long odds, the Ukrainian counteroffensive, because they have to admit that it's going to be a slaughter of the Ukrainian personnel on the incredible scale. But not merely because President Biden has hesitated in supplying Kyiv with F-16 fighters and long-range missiles, but also because NATO and America's broader strategy for Europe borders on appeasement. Mr. Morici, here is his curriculum vitae, so to speak, and he actually is, how to put it, he checks all the check boxes which are for the Nyakon and the moron. He has PhD, State University of New York at Albany. His research interests are international economic policy and commercial agreements, World Trade Organization. In other words, the guy knows nothing about modern world, about modern industry, about modern military-industrial complex, and of course he has no clue about military. Yet, guess what? His views are frequently featured on CNN, CBS, BBC, Fox, ABC, CNBC, and NPR and PB. So there you go. This is the guy who is obviously butthurt. He's very butthurt, and he parades himself as a sore loser when he begins to say those things. Lacking credible air support, the Ukrainian army must undertake a high-risk combined arms approach that carefully choreographs infantry, armor, combat engineers, and air defenses, something only the US Army among the Western allies is capable of doing. I have a news for Mr. Morrissey and those people who in Washington Times and any kind of American media organization. America is not the only nation which among Western allies capable of doing the multi-domain operations. In fact, it is not capable of doing this because, as I already stated many times, I am on record, you can quote me, American frontline air defense is basically non-existent. It will not be able to stop any kind of salvo, and because of that, any talks about United States just getting into the fight with those damn Ruskies, you know, it's just basically going to be the same thing, basically, which is happening now with Ukrainian armed forces. And not only me, many people are on the record. United States, in this case, will sustain the level of KIAs, or casualties in general, including wounded, which will be within the months, in tens of thousands of killed and wounded. So if United States is ready to face this operational reality, sure, but then of course we have to understand that Mr. Morrissey, who is nobody really in the realm of warfare, modern warfare, and basically speaks in the platitudes and absolutely meaningless phrases, he wouldn't be fighting. But I would suggest, if he suggests what he suggests, let him lead. And that's what he says. What happens in Ukraine will happen in Taiwan next. And it is high time NATO went on aggressive footing, forward deploying whole brigades along its border with Russia and Belarus, capable of offensive incursions, and establishing a no-fly zone over Ukraine and supplying the missiles and aircraft Kyiv needs to take the war into Russia. This is the guy who is not only, he is basically covered, because only cowards write this garbage, and he is butthurt. And obviously he doesn't understand what is the no-fly zone and how it is enforced against, for example, air defense such as Russia's. But of course he's PhD and he teaches some crap actually in some Maryland university, and that's what you get. These are American elites on parade here. These are the people who think that they know anything. He does know nothing, and especially is concerning warfare. And obviously the guy will not be able to calculate a required force for even to try to enforce the no-fly zone over Ukraine. You have to be completely nut job, which he is, to even try to pretend that. And even Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, actually on record that you cannot do that. But hey, Mr. Morrissey, obviously, because he has PhD in some absolutely crappy program in economics, which means primarily on how making money on the Wall Street, he knows nothing. And that's what he suggests. This is the level of American expert community today, including military. And this is the thing which many people cannot wrap their brains around. They cannot reconcile themselves with the fact that we are looking at a nation which is absolutely incompetent practically across the board. And when you look at this and you see this type of news, it becomes very clear why it is so. Here it is. Basically, St. Petersburg International Economic Forum is opening pretty soon. And here what we have. A decision has been made this time not to provide accreditation to publications from unfriendly countries. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told news agency TASS. And here it is. One of the first one who got kicked out, of course, are lying sacks of crap from London, which is, according to Reuters, its Moscow office was told by organizers on Friday that its accreditation have been revoked. I want to point out to you, recall, I mentioned it very many times, Mr. Lavrov a couple of years ago, when was asked the question from CNN, just basically told them to write whatever they want because they're gonna lie anyway. And then it shows you how stupid those people are. And I'm not talking about just media, Western media, and actually to a degree Russian media. It's a sewer. It always was. It's a sewer of the losers in human and professional terms who pretend that they have some kind of non-existent profession of journalist, quote unquote. And look at this. Dubbed Russian Davos by the foreign media, the SPIF, St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, is one of Russia's top events aimed at fostering trade relations with companies from around the world. Only moron, and this is only the moron from the neoliberal economic and worldview or media organization, could have dubbed the SPIF as Russian Davos, which is, we know, on the World Economic Forum. There is nothing more opposite in its vector of the development of the society and the world than WEF or Davos and of course SPIF. These are two different things, and people at SPIF actually discuss real things: how to produce more energy, how to develop the industrial capabilities of the developing world, how to build hydroelectric dams, how to build aircraft, commercial aircraft, and things of this nature, how to develop resources. It is everything what World Economic Forum and people who run it, most of them morons, including Mr. Klaus Schwab, stand against. And when you call it Davos, I mean, it's just insult, actually. It is the same if somebody would tell me that, do you want to become a journalist from Wall Street Journal? It is like being, named a whore, a prostitute, basically. This is what it comes down to. And those people who actually work today in all those how to say it, media outlets, it's a sewer, okay, let's face it, it's a sewer. They have to keep in mind that Russians already started proceedings, it was in the news, of the establishing of the real war crimes tribunal. And this was done along the lines of Russian Investigative Committee, and State Duma is taking part of it in those proceedings. Well, guess what? And this is very interesting situation. All those so-called journalists, in reality conduits for the misinformation and basically supporters of the terrorist activities, of the genocide and things of this nature, they will be mentioned there. And that means a serious legal responsibility. And here we have to come down to this situation with this Han guy from the International Criminal Court who issued the warrant for arrest of Mr. Putin. So now we have this meeting with BRICS, and the United States works overtime to try to sabotage it, because obviously South Africa, Republic of South Africa, is the party to the International Criminal Court in Hague, and basically they ratified all those agreements. So they are facing now the situation they need to arrest Mr. Putin. Who is basically unofficial leader of BRICS, and they are really desperate there in South Africa, but obviously there is a back and forth between the capitals and of BRICS countries what to do with this. Fact is, Putin doesn't have to go there to start with, in order not to actually make life very miserable for South African government, but truth is, one of the reasons why United States wants to sabotage BRICS is because actually it's not just those BRICS countries which will be there. There will be a number of the what is called friends of BRICS, and these are very important countries which will be taking part in this conference, including people from Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Argentina, and just name it. So it's really representative. It's really serious representation there. And when you look at this, you begin to understand why they are so desperate to sabotage it. However, trying to sabotage it, supporting meanwhile the terrorist activity against Russia, and Washington supports it, London especially. Terrorism and killing innocent people is also very good tradition of people in London. So, and when you look at this, you suddenly get this news, which is like, what the heck? Mr. Sullivan 2 days ago suddenly wants to engage Russia nuclear arms control post-treaty, but what is very important, the Biden administration is ready to talk to Russia without conditions about future nuclear arms control framework, even while taking countermeasures in response to Kremlin's decision to suspend the last nuclear arms control treaty between the two countries, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Friday. First, you have to understand that nobody takes anybody from Biden administration seriously, be that Jake Sullivan, Anthony Blinken, Lloyd Austin. In Russia, they do not take them seriously. They, in fact, they really do not care about them and whatever they offer. And you can see immediately a response of Mr. Ryabkov, Deputy Foreign Minister of Russian Federation, who said that Russia sets out terms for return to key nuclear treaty. Russia will return to full compliance with the New START treaty only in Washington if Washington abandons its hostile policy towards Moscow, Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov has stated. Next day, it is obvious that talking to Russian language of ultimatums won't work, the diplomat asserted. But we have to also keep in mind that Russians are not that stupid as many in Washington think. Many do, believe me. They think Russians are backward and retarded people. And but the main point of Russia not rushing to meet United States halfway on the New START is because everybody understands what the United States wants. They want to factor in Chinese, rather small nuclear deterrent, but secondly, they need the return to inspections, because obviously they understand that Russian strike potential and deterrent grows, tremendously in its capability, and those technologies the United States simply doesn't have. And we are talking about not just strike capabilities, which involve such things as Sarmat and new generation of the hypersonic gliding vehicles of the strategic nature, not just operational or tactical. And there's also the issue of the air and anti-ballistic missile defense, which Russia develops with incredible speed. And we already know that S-500 is in the serial production. S-550 is being developed and should be taking actually the deployment or initial operational capability, if not already very soon. And when you look at this, United States needs that now, because obviously, and as I already stated many times, read my lips, United States lost the arms race. And people do not even understand the scale of this loss, and the gap is only growth, and that is why Mr. Sullivan or whoever else will come out in those funny little presses and statements, they need to return to this. Russia will not go there. Why? Russia has escalation dominance and technological lead, which is actually growing. There is no rush, and that's what many people still refuse to recognize. And then, of course, when we talk about like this Mr. Morrissey or whatever the heck his name is, and all those analysts, so to speak, here we have this news, which from Reuters no less, and even those guys, they cannot hide this anymore. And here's what they stated 3 days ago. Russia's factory activity expands for 13 months running in May. Activity in Russian manufacturing sector increased for the 13th month running in May, and employment rose at its sharpest pace in more than 2 decades through export orders, though export orders contracted, a business survey showed on Thursday. And when you look at this, you begin to understand basically that, and I am saying this non-stop, they miscalculated so badly that the only thing which is left for them is to continue with the terrorist activity against Russia. These are pinpricks designed only for PR, because obviously, as Scott Ritter states, as Colonel McGregor states, as Larry Johnson states, the war is over effectively. The only thing they can do is to kill Russian civilians, execute, rape, and things of this nature. London especially is good at it. And so when you look at this, it's just how they're gonna to find this ramp off. Of course they will lie. This is what Western media do. They lie all the time. And they will try to basically package it as some kind of the they need this counteroffensive. They need to show something. And what will be the show? The show will be, of course, they will continue to lie about those successes of the armed forces of Ukraine, and Russians will be slaughtering them, whatever will be thrown at them, and no amount of the financial, military, or any other help from the West, read NATO, will help to alleviate situation, because Ukraine probably now, after we heard statements from Mr. Medvedev and Mr. Putin himself, Ukraine is not going to exist most likely. And that's just the, basically the outcome of all that. And this is what I wanted to tell you today, except for one thing which I want to close my, so to speak, video today to you with this stunning news, actually. You probably already heard about this. This is about fact that Ireland wants to slaughter 200,000 dairy cows to meet its climate targets. And even when you have this tabloid, the Telegraph, writing about that it is madness, what can I say? It is madness, and Europe will be hungry, it will be miserable, it's already getting there, and they will have the basically those guys, lefty and anarchists, creating a mayhem like they did in Germany today, in Leipzig, hunting on those supposedly right-wing guys. So what can I say? This is just a start. And we have to kind of, buckle up, because it is a very interesting ride. And this is what I want to tell you today, and this couldn't wait. And make your own conclusions when you put together this whole picture. And what can I say? If you want to avoid serious gastrointestinal issues, especially, acid indigestion, don't take only omeprazole. Avoid reading most of the mainstream Western media outlets. It's a complete trash, as are most people who work there. This is absolute madness. I never experienced anything in my life, and believe me, I'm a good old Cold War warrior. And here we are today. So this is what I wanted to tell you today. And as always, guys, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford it, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee or two. And that will be it for today, guys. Have the nice rest of your weekend, and I talk to you later. Bye-bye.